Welcome in, everybody. This is your self-care staffing for Friday, May 22nd, 2020. I am Lou Pascal. I'm the school social worker in the Manchester City Schools in Manchester, Tennessee. Today, I want to take a lot of the things that I've been discussing over the course of this video series and help you put them together into a self-care plan. This might be a little bit of a longer session. Hopefully, after you've watched this video and maybe taken a day or two to process what I'm going to say, you will be able to put it all together into a self-care plan that is individualized for your life. That's the goal. If you would like a worksheet template for a self-care plan, there are lots of them available online. There is a gentleman who has a website called Social Work Tech. He has a template for a self-care plan. There are a lot of tools on the Teachers Pay Teachers website. Some free resources there include a self-care plan, self-care calendar, and an activity to make a self-care box. If you would like a template for a self-care plan that exactly aligns with this video, mine is available on Teachers Pay Teachers for $3. I will share the link in the description. The self-care plan also comes with 3 journal prompts and some lined paper to respond to the prompts. So, here are some areas to consider when writing a self-care plan. I want to encourage you to start with your self-care goal. So we're kind of starting with the goal and then working backwards from that to know what our practices might be. So I have 3 statements for you to complete to outline your self-care goal. Number 1, I want to feel more blank as a result of my self-care practice. Number 2, I want to feel less blank as a result of my self-care practice. Number 3, I want to experience blank as a result of my self-care practice. So in order to answer these, think about, how will I know I've reached my self-care goal? What will my life feel like once I'm consistently practicing self-care? So my answers to those prompts were, I want to feel more calm and organized and that I'm doing things I enjoy as a result of my self-care practice. I want to feel less rushed as a result of my self-care practice. I want to experience completed craft projects as a result of my self-care practice. So that kind of outlines your goal for self-care. The next thing I want to encourage you to contemplate are triggers. What are some things that occur in my life that tip me off to the fact that it's time for me to practice some self-care? In a perfect world, we would all practice self-care consistently and we might not get triggered by different circumstances. We all know this is not a perfect world. So some of my triggers are when I start snapping, when I start being real short and snappy in my answers to people that I love. The next one is when I'm trying really hard, when I'm working really hard, but it seems like nothing is working, like everything I touch is turning to garbage. That is a trigger that lets me know that it is time for me to practice some self-care. The next area I want you to consider are barriers. What are some things that keep me from practicing self-care? So for me, taking on too much. I heard an interview the other day with 2 people talking about productivity, and they were talking about all the wonderful ideas of things that they could think of to do. And it would be great if they could do all of them. They could see benefits from all the ideas, but they talked about basically their eyes being too big. And the fact is, we are finite beings and we can only accomplish so much. So that is one of my barriers, is when I take on too much. Another one is I am very much a work first, play later kind of person. So, and that has helped me have some wonderful results in my life. It can also be out of control. So, when I am being too insistent on working first and playing later, that can be a barrier for me for self-care. And again, that's not a humble brag. Oh, I work so hard. That's not what that is. That's just, I'm just being real with what my characteristics are. I'm not trying to make it seem like something good when it absolutely can be something negative. The bottom line is some of our eccentricities are just a little more socially acceptable. So working too much, working too hard, that's very socially acceptable. That doesn't mean it's good for you all the time. The next area I want you to think of is time. So what tasks can I quit or streamline that will allow me to repurpose that time for my self-care practice? We talked about that earlier this week. I will link that video for you. We talked about that in the Wednesday self-care staffing. So for me, one of the tasks that I can quit or streamline would be unintentional scrolling on my phone. Now, if I decide I'm going to give myself 10 minutes to scroll on Pinterest or Instagram, then that's fine, and that can absolutely be a self-care practice. But if I'm just sitting around and I'm just cycling through all the social media sites over and over and over again, instead of putting my phone down and going and doing something that will make me feel better, then that is not a self-care practice. So, unintentional scrolling on my phone. The next area that I want you to consider are strategies. So, what are specific self-care practices I would like to implement? My answer to that was being able to observe unhelpful thoughts and dismiss them quickly. If you've listened to a lot of guided meditations, you have heard them respond to unhelpful thoughts or give a response to unhelpful thoughts as just to say thank you to that thought and then bring your attention back to your breath. So I would like to be able to observe those unhelpful thoughts and dismiss them quickly, say thank you to them, and come back to my breath and being mindful and being present in the moment. So that's one of my strategies. We talked in the video yesterday about self-care mentors. So again, I will link to that video. That's the next area that I want you to consider. Who could be a self-care mentor for you? So who do I know in real life or that I could get to know through books, interviews, those types of things, who practices really good self-care or who has been where I am and may have some wisdom to share? Or remember, a mentor can just as well be an example of choices you don't want to make in your life. So all of those things can be included in self-care mentorship. So your mentors hopefully will have some points about strategies. They will have some things to tell you that they do as a part of their self-care practice that they maybe could pass on to you, that could be an encouragement to you, that could give you some ideas of things to try. Some of the ones that I can share and some of the ones that I want to include in my self-care plan for the next few weeks, probably. I have mentioned Ryan Holiday to you all before, that he has an email list about reading. He does a lot of blog posts and gives good information about reading and what role it has in his life. He actually has a class on improving your reading. I would like to take that class. So that would be a strategy for me from one of my self-care mentors. Another one is Elise Blaha-Kripe. I've mentioned her several times, that she makes the planner that I use, the Get to Work book. This is not an endorsement of any of those things. That just happens to be what I use, and I really like it. She can be a mentor to me because she is much better at pulling the trigger on an idea than I am. And she is willing to write and say her goals without fear that she won't do them. One of the ways that I'm going to get mentorship from her, one of the strategies that I'm going to use, I told you guys about the Listen Notes search engine on the session about podcasts. I'm going to link a lot of things for y'all today. The Listen Notes site is a search engine just for podcasts. And so what I did is I went into Listen Notes and I typed her name in, and I found all these podcast episodes that she had been on. And then they have a feature on Listen Notes called Listen Later. So you can add it to your Listen Later. Then you can get a RSS feed for your Listen Later, and you can put it in your Feedly. So then all those podcasts episodes that you selected, they're right there in your Feedly, and you can listen to them as you have time to do it. And you can add new podcasts anytime you want to, and they'll show up in your Feedly. So I will listen to those, and I will listen to Elise talk about goals and how she has the courage to write them down and say them and make choices and not look back. And that will be a form of mentorship for me. A last one that I'll share with you is I recently found a podcast about social workers and fundraising. And that is a part of my social work practice, is raising money for different causes. So I definitely want to listen to that episode with the social workers talking about fundraising so that I can take advantage of their knowledge in that area. So the self-care challenge today is for you to find a self-care plan template that you like and write your plan down, either today or in the next few days. Make it a point to get something down on paper. If you want to make it from all the areas that I just discussed, you can rewatch this video and go through and address all of those areas. I have several quotes for you today. The first one, planning long and well was one of her special talents. Planning long and well was one of her special talents. And that was E.L. Konigsberg. The book was From the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler. That is a young adult novel. It's very good. I enjoyed it. E.L. Konigsberg. The next quote, it was all irrational fear, but the way I dealt with such panic was to go to my fix-it place. So sometimes having some sort of plan, a self-care plan, can help you address those fears. And when you have those fears, you can go to your fix-it place. And that was Jennifer Gilbert. The book was I Never Promised You a Goodie Bag, a memoir of a life through events, the ones you plan and the ones you don't. This lady was an event planner, and I have done quite a bit of event planning in my personal and professional life, and so I like to read books about other people that do event planning. That's another self-care mentor for me, are different people that have written books about event planning. Another quote, have a plan. This makes it harder for others to derail you and easier to determine what's part of your agenda and what isn't. The Chinese general Sun Tzu said that nothing will ever go according to plan, but if you have no plan, you will definitely fail. That is Pamela Druckerman. The book was There Are No Grown-Ups, a midlife coming of age story. Another quote, every good social worker I know has a self-plan, and that was Eva Ford from How Not to Practice Social Work. saving good people from bad practice one step at a time. If you don't design your own life plan, chances are you'll fall into someone else's plan. And guess what they have planned for you? Not much. That's not always true. Sometimes people have wonderful things planned for you, but sometimes people don't, and they find someone who doesn't have their own plan and use that to their advantage. That was Jim Rohn, and he was also quoted in Eva Ford's book, How Not to Practice Social Work. A couple more. Put the planning time commitment in your calendar as a weekly recurring event. That was Elizabeth Grace Saunders, How to Invest Your Time Like Money. That's another thing. Once you have this plan written, you can revisit it. You can make yourself an appointment to revisit it, maybe every week, maybe every month, but revisit it and see if that plan is still working for you. Make updates to it, whatever you need to do. The last quote, make a plan, but don't make planning your project. That was Allie Edwards, and I'm sure that was from her blog. Do make a plan, but don't make planning your project. And I definitely have fallen into that in the past. The planning of something seems more enjoyable sometimes than the actual doing of it. But we want you to make a self-care plan, and then we want you to actually do the plan. The song is going to be Montel Jordan, This Is How We Do It. I will link that for you in the description. The video today is called Pearls of Wisdom. I've said many times I'm a knitter, and so this is a knitting related video. It is a video about a lady that knits, and this lady has a plan. She was 83 when it was filmed, and that was about 2 years ago, so she's about 85 now if she's still living. She has a plan not to be lonely. She has a plan about how she wants to die. She has a plan not to go to jail because she won't be able to knit. So it's a wonderful video about having a plan, specifically through the lens of her knitting life. So I, again, will put the links in the description for you of the things that I mentioned today. In addition to the self-care plan that I told you about that's on my Teachers Pay Teachers store, I also have a free download that is a self-care menu that has 100 ideas for self-care. That link will also be in the description. You will also find the information about where to find me on other social media platforms. As you all know, today was the last day that I had planned to make a self-care video as a part of my initial commitment. When the school closures started in mid-March, I said that I would make a video about self-care every day of the school closures due to COVID-19. And this week is the last week of our school year in my district, Manchester City Schools. So I have given a lot of thought to what direction this is going to take next. And right now, what I think I'm going to do is to continue to do a video, but I'm going to do it once a week. I know if we go back to school in the fall in person as normal, it will be a big stretch for me to do a video every single day. I want these videos to be really good for y'all, and there's a lot of planning that goes into it and a lot of time to actually film the videos. So I'm going to try it on a once a week basis. So please be sure that you are subscribed on YouTube so that you can continue to be aware of when I publish content. And I hope that you all have a wonderful weekend, and I will have one self-care video for you next week, and we'll start doing self-care staffings on a weekly basis versus a daily basis. And if all hearts and minds are clear, I will see you all next week.